Reading nutrition labels. Let's dive right in. Today we're going to talk about, of course, reading nutrition labels. We will talk about each nutrition label line by line, what that means to you, and how you can use the information displayed on the nutrition label to make better choices. Then we will discuss the upcoming changes to the nutrition label that you can expect to see in 2018. Disclaimer here, this nutrition label is straight from the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration's website. The numbers on this nutrition label are not accurate or true for any particular food. It is just a sample. The numbers are just plugged in. Sometimes they don't quite add up, but it is used as an educational tool. So that is exactly what we will be using it for. Right at the top of the nutritional facts, you're going to see serving sizes and servings per container. Serving sizes are standardized by food type, so similar food types will have similar serving sizes. However, where it can be misleading is the servings per container. You'll see in this example that there are 8 servings per container. However, sometimes even food packages that lead you to believe they are single servings may have 2 or even 2.5 servings per container. So make sure you are aware of the serving size and how many servings are per container when you're consuming this particular food. The calories are going to be a representation of how much energy you can expect to receive from this particular food, and it is displayed per serving. So you'll need to reference the section above where it says serving size. For example, if you were to eat this entire package, you would actually take the 230 calories, multiply it by 8, and that would be the actual amount of calories you received. Sometimes people will look at a nutrition label, they'll glance at the calories, and they'll assume that that reflects how many calories are in the entire container, and that is not true. That adds to obesity, heart disease, and a whole lot of issues within that individual. Next on this section, you'll see calories from fat. Calories from fat are displayed on the label here because it was once thought that fat needed to be separate. It needed to be recognized as a separate macronutrient because you needed to understand how much fat you were eating. This is going to change on the upcoming label. You will no longer see calories from fat. There are 9 calories in 1 fat gram. So if you want to calculate how many grams of fat there are in a particular food, you would take the calories from fat, in this example would be 4, you would divide it by 9 and you would get 4.5. You'll see in this example that it actually says 8. Remember at the beginning I told you that this is not an accurate food. This is not, these numbers have just been plugged in here for educational purpose. They are not reflecting each other. So if this was an actual nutrition label, what you would see under total fat is you would see 4. The reason you would not see 4.5 is because anytime a calorie is 50 or below, it is rounded down to the nearest 5. Once a total calorie per product is 50 or more, then it starts getting rounded to the nearest 10. In this example, this would have been rounded down to 4. Here is a better representation of calories from fat and how it's reflected in the total fat. So like I said, 1 gram of fat contains 9 calories. In this example of the elbow macaroni pasta, you'll see that there are 10 calories from fat, which equals 1 gram of fat. This I just thought was silly. This is an example of 2 identical items, and you can see that the nutritional label is different. On the left, you see the calories are 160. On the right, they're 140. That is just kind of a funny haha. Moving on to daily values. So the daily values are going to be reflected on the right side of the nutritional label. They are always based on a 2,000 calorie diet, which is thought to be the average number of calories that the average American will consume on an average day. Of course, nobody's average. Most people consume more. Some people consume less. Males consume more. Females consume less. It is just an average and a place to start so that they can start to inform the consumer. Again, this is just a generalization, but this is helpful if you're on a special diet or a meal plan that is very close to 2,000 calories. If you look at the bottom of the nutritional facts, you'll see that there is also a 2,500 calorie option, and it's compared side by side to the 2,000 calorie option. The total fat is going to be a representation of how many grams of fat or how many calories from fat you can expect from this particular food item. Like we talked about a few minutes ago, it will normally coincide with the calories from fat, which is directly above. This is also going to have an itemized line by line for saturated fat and trans fat. Saturated fat has been shown to be linked to chronic disease and heart disease in the past. While that is actually changing now, the reason it's displayed on the food label is so that you are aware of how much saturated fat you're consuming. Trans fat have been categorized by the FDA as not safe for human consumption, and most food companies are phasing them out. In fact, they have to phase those out of their foods, but it's still required that trans fat are listed on the label so that you are aware if you are consuming a trans fat. Cholesterol and sodium are listed, and they're going to display both the milligrams and the percent daily value. Cholesterol is linked to chronic disease and heart disease, and sodium as well is linked to heart disease. So that's why they're listed on the label, is so that you are aware of how much cholesterol and sodium you are consuming. You want to try to limit your cholesterol and your sodium. And if you look down at the bottom part of the nutrition label, you'll see cholesterol and sodium. It says less than 300 milligrams for cholesterol and less than 2,400 milligrams for sodium. So those are the measurements that you want to try to stay below. Carbohydrates have 4 calories per gram. So if you were to take 37 times it by 4, you could come up with exactly how many calories this particular food item had per gram. Dietary fiber is also listed because fiber is going to help with your digestion. It's going to keep your body moving. It's going to help with your bowels. And so dietary fiber is listed because it is a healthy nutrient. Often you can deduct fiber from the total carbohydrate count and get a net carbohydrate. So in this example, 37 minus 4 would actually be 33 grams of net carbohydrates for this particular food item. That's really only applicable or really only useful if you're on a special diet plan, or if your doctor or nutritionist, dietitian, somebody has told you to deduct fiber from the total carbohydrate count. In normal situations, you don't need to do that equation. You don't need to deduct that fiber. Just be aware that you are wanting to have at least 25 grams of fiber per day. That is also shown as an example at the bottom of the nutrition label, where it shows you dietary fiber. Then it says 25 grams a day for a 2,000 calorie diet, or 30 grams a day or a 2,500 calorie diet. So this gives you a way to kind of keep track throughout the day of how much fiber you're getting, to make sure that you are getting enough fiber. Protein is listed because protein, of course, is the building block of the human. It is digested into and broken down into amino acids. Protein, just like carbohydrates, have 4 calories per gram. So if you were to take 3 grams times it by 4, you would find that there are 12 calories from protein in this particular food item. The micronutrients are going to be your vitamin A, your vitamin C, your calcium, and your iron. The reason vitamin A and vitamin C are listed on the nutritional facts is because in the 1990s, both of these vitamins were very common deficiencies for most Americans. So the FDA decided that they needed to display those vitamins on the nutrition label so that we could start to be aware of what we're consuming and choose foods that are higher in vitamin A or higher in vitamin C. This is also why you see on the front of a food label claims for high in vitamin A or high in vitamin C. The ingredient list is a place you're going to want to pay particular attention to, especially when it comes to the Sugar Academy. As we now know, sugars are not listed separate on nutritional labels. It is just a running total of all the sugar found inside that particular food item, including naturally occurring sugars such as those from fruit, dairy, or grains. The ingredients on the ingredient list are listed in order of weight. So the items that are first are more prominent in this food item, the bulk of how this food item is created. For example, enriched wheat flour is the first item and the main ingredient in this particular example. You'll see right under where it says enriched wheat flour, there's parentheses, unbleached wheat flour, malted barley flour, niacin, reduced iron, potassium bromate, thiamine. But what it means inside the parentheses is that enriched wheat flour, while they only used enriched wheat flour, the flour that they used had added ingredients, and it had the unbleached wheat flour, the malted barley, the niacin, the reduced iron, all of those ingredients inside that parentheses. Anytime you see a parentheses after a food item, you'll know that that particular food item had other additives that they are listing for you. At the bottom, you'll see allergy information. So if a food item is manufactured in a facility that also manufactures foods that are commonly known to cause an allergic reaction, it will be displayed on the food label. If this food also contains items that are most commonly known for creating allergic reactions, such as eggs, milk, soy, and wheat, it will also be listed. So that information can be found under the nutritional label. Let's discuss the 2018 nutritional label changes. These are really exciting, especially for those of us in the Sugar Academy, because there is one really big change coming up that I am extremely excited for. But before we get to that, let me just show you a side-by-side comparison of the two nutrition labels. The first thing you're going to notice is that the serving sizes are changing. So instead of showing you first a serving size, it's now going to tell you how many servings there are per container. That is the first thing that they list. The second thing they're listing is the serving size, and it's also in larger font and bolded so that you'll understand when you look at it, a serving size is 2/3 cup. Well, 2/3 cup of this particular item may not be very much, so you may actually eat double that. Calories are also enlarged and bolded to draw your eye to that particular area. Sugars will now be displayed as both sugars and added sugars. This is so exciting for me. I cannot wait for this to happen. It is so hard to look at a food that claims to have no added sugar or claims to be healthy. When you look at it, it's got 12 grams of sugar, but how do you know how much of that's coming from naturally occurring fruit or dairy? So this is extremely exciting because now total sugars and added sugars are going to be listed as separate line items on the nutritional label, so you can tell exactly how many grams of added sugar the manufacturer has put into this food item just to make it taste better. Of course, we're going to try to aim for 0 on total added sugars, but total sugars, what you can do is you can take the 10 grams of added sugar and minus that out of the 12, and you'll see that there's 2 grams of naturally occurring sugar in this particular food item. Calories from fat are also being removed from the new nutrition label because while it was once thought that fat was the reason people were having chronic disease and obesity, it's now being linked more to sugar. So fat is not as much of a concern as it once was. However, trans fat is still going to be listed on both labels. Vitamin A and vitamin C are both being removed from the label because those deficiencies are not as much of a concern as they once were. However, calcium and potassium are being added because we need to make sure that we're eating enough potassium and calcium. They lead to helping your body reduce chronic disease. And you now have the knowledge to go out and make very educated choices for the foods that you eat and the foods that you feed your family. So knowledge is powerful. Go be powerful.